welcome to today's session. I'll just start sharing my screen so that you can have the access to the material. Okay, so here we are. Self-care at the time of crisis. So, namaste, good evening. I welcome each one of you to the session. My name is Dhruvi. I'm a counseling psychologist, been practicing for the last 4 years. And Supriya is also the person who's going to be the facilitator with me today. So, I'll just take you to the contents that we are going to have. Um, that's us, Supriya and me. So, counseling and handling pandemic in the best possible ways that we can do, from understanding mental health and also checking how we can go ahead from there. So, these are some of the topics that we are going to cover today. What is counseling? Why do we do need it? Signs of good therapy, talking about COVID and self care, and tips for singles, couples, and parents who've been juggling to, work from home. So, these are going to be the contents of the session today. We'll be talking for about 45 minutes. So at 5:45, we'll open the chat window and questions so that we also have an interactive sessions and we can make the best possible use of this webinar. So that is about me. I will hand over the screen to Supriya to begin with the session. And if you have any questions, please write them on the chats. And we have a Skillcraft moderator who would be, helping us to understand the logistics of that. So if you have any questions around that, please go ahead with them. Thank you. So over to you, Supriya.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our session. Thank you so much for signing up. It's my first webinar, and I'm feeling a little nervous, but I think it'll go well. Okay, so I'm a little new to the process, so do bear with us if we take time to switch control, because it's only when we switch control then the other person can talk, unlike Zoom. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so what is counseling, right? I'm a counseling psychologist. I have about 14 years of experience in the corporate sector. So I worked for customer care, sales, vendor management, and then ended it with HR. And then, my story is that I was having a bit of a crisis in my personal life and decided to go for counseling because of that. And then it really transformed the way I looked at myself, the way I looked at relationships, the way I looked at my bosses, at my peers, at my coworkers, at my own family, my friends, how I came across as a person, how I came across in the different roles that I was playing with them. How was I contributing to the problems around me, rather than only blaming them? So it's been a very transformative journey for me, learning and understanding, my very specific contributions that come from the past, that come from my own experiences. And that is when I decided that this is what I wanted to do, especially for the corporate sector, because there's hardly any, there weren't too many choices back then. I had to Google up what is counseling. I had to sort of find it on, forgotten the name of the app. There were apps during those days that gave you just dial, right? Like the numbers, unlike now where you get information so easily. So yeah, it's been 5 years since that transformative journey, and I think my aim today is to, or my part of my contribution to the presentation is to sort of simplify counseling a bit, and sort of give the insight on the basis of my experience, right, which you may not really always find on Google. So counseling is really a very exclusive, individual counseling is a very exclusive one-to-one relationship with a counselor. Whatever, okay, it's a setting that happens once a week. It's for a period of 50 minutes to 1 hour. an opportunity for the client to share not just problems, but literally anything, their opinions, their fears, their disgust against someone, what they're thinking about their boss in office, what they're thinking about their wife, how tired they are of being a mom to the child, even statements which would like create a reaction like this if their friend had to hear it or their family members had to hear it. So counseling is really an opportunity to express literally every aspect of your life to a third person, to a professional who's actually trained to listen to you and is passionate about it. Okay, so that is what counseling is. Why counseling? Why not go and talk to to your friends or to your mom or to your dad or your sister? So the difference, the really very, very distinctive nature of counseling is that the person that who is your counselor does not have a relationship with you outside the counseling space. Okay, it starts because you want to talk about issues, you want to explore your feelings, you want to look at a problem objectively. There is a hard decision you've been wanting to make. And sometimes when you go to people, especially the people who are in a very intimate, emotionally intimate relationship with you, they are very affected by the very decisions that you'll be making. And so their advice to you or support to you gets colored with that lens. What's going to happen to me? She wants to join that job and I'm not too sure how it's going to affect my relationship. So what's going to happen to me? He wants to marry that girl and I don't know how, I don't like her too much. What's going to happen to me? So that you don't have that problem with a counselor because it's so objective in nature. The other thing is once the counselor is a counselor, they cannot share any other relationship with you. It's only one relationship, and that is that of the therapeutic space. Okay, so it's an area to explore feelings without being judged. There is an objective viewpoint that comes from the counselor that is almost impossible to get from anywhere else. And I know this because I have been under counseling for 8 years. I have been counseling people for 5 years. So it's really close to impossible to get that kind of objective viewpoint. Privacy. So a counseling session is a guaranteed confidentiality session. There's actually a contract that both the counselor and the counselee signs, and it very specifically says that whatever you choose to disclose in the session remains between you and me. There are certain conditions under which confidentiality is breached, and that is if there is self-harm, if there are suicidal thoughts, if there are thoughts to somebody else, especially in cases of minor, if there is abuse, any kind of abuse happening in their circumstances, or when there's an order from the court. Okay, so this is very clearly spelled out right at the beginning. It's almost like the first session. It is spelled out that under these circumstances, confidentiality will be breached. But outside of that, whatever you talk remains in the session. Nobody else gets access to it, not even your spouse or your parents or how much ever a well-wisher they are, they just don't get access to the contents of the session. And so it becomes an extremely safe space to explore what's going on with you. Why are certain things triggering you in a certain manner? How can you react to it differently? So these are some of the areas that counseling can address. Okay, addiction, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, nicotine abuse. Uh, I have been saying that in the last decade, especially, the use of weed or ganja or marijuana has become very okay. It's become very normalized. Now, as a counselor, I'm not going to tell the client whether that is good for you or that is bad for you because I think there is enough information in the form of friends, family, spouses, Google, that tells you what is good and what is not good in the medical sense. Forget the emotional part. In the medical sense, is it good? Is it not? What I would explore with my clients is, okay, so you are taking weed every day. Does it serve a function for you? What is it that you might be, is it a form of stress reliever? Is it aligning with your internal values or your moral compass? Um, do you want to quit it? If you want to quit it, then let's talk about it. I'm not going to come and say, oh, this is not good for you. The moral judgment just doesn't help. It actually sort of gets in the way of counseling. So things like addiction, illnesses would be like chronic illnesses like cancer, um, and any such illness is it's an extremely stressful factor for any person's life. So being in illness, it would be very, very useful to get into counseling if you're undergoing any kind of illness. One thing is I'm not looking at the chat windows at the moment. I'm going to be looking at it once, Dhruvi talks, because it's hard for me to do kind of dual focus. Yeah. So do bring in your questions. Do bring in your questions. There's a separate window called questions, which is actually we have the ability to project some of those questions and answer them. So if you have specific questions, I would request you to actually click on the tab and ask them. Yeah. Uh, Stress, relationships. I specialize in relationships. Trauma, bereavement. Bereavement would be like the loss of something very significant to you. Mostly it's used in case of people, but it could also be something like you lost a job, divorce, etc. And then self-esteem. This is another very, very common area that comes up in counseling. I don't get clients coming to me saying that I have a low self-esteem, but it will begin to sound something like, I want to say no to my mother, but I'm not able to. Okay, so why are you not being assertive? Because I don't think I deserve to say a no, because I don't think I deserve space. I want to say no to my husband, I'm not able to. I want to say no to my girlfriend, I'm not able to. I want to say children, and in the role of a parent, I'm not able to. So self-esteem is a very, very common area that I get to work with my clients when it comes to counseling. Okay, signs of good therapy. I think this is the one slide I've sort of really spent time on. What I'd like to bring, to your notice is what therapy is and what therapy isn't. Okay, there is a general misconception that the therapist is your friend. Okay, therapy is not friendship. You can't call up a therapist any time of the night or day and discuss your problems. There's a certain professional setting to it. There is a border, a framework within which the therapy happens. It's scheduled mostly once a week. It's scheduled for 50 minutes. WhatsApp messages, sharing of pictures, etc., are highly discouraged unless it's extremely necessary and again discussed beforehand, yeah, between the therapist and the person seeking therapy. So friendship will have grounds like, maybe you've grown up together, maybe you met that person in a class, maybe you just like to hang out. A therapist will not just hang out with you. The purpose of the therapy is very clear, and it is for your benefit. It is for you to come out of a certain situation, have an alternative way of thinking, etc. A therapist will be very keen on your history and biography. Now, there are different ways in which counseling happens. Some of the fathers of psychology say it is your childhood that determines who you are today. Some of them say it is the social environment that determines who you are today. Some of them say you are, the author of the story. How you decide to feel your experiences today is how, is what will determine whether you can change or not. So so it makes sense for a therapist to kind of take the history and the biography. We call it narrative. It's very important for the therapist to understand how the client is narrating their story. Which parts of the story do they pay attention to? Which are the parts that still have a very deep impact today? Okay, so you will find that a good therapist is actually asking you a lot of questions, some questions at least about your past, some questions about what are your significant life events up to today. A good therapist will be someone who will actually accentuate your dignity and worth. They will not make fun of you. They will not look down upon you. Sometimes you can have very morally dilemma kind of questions. Like, for example, I had a client who wanted to get an abortion done, but couldn't make up her mind on whether she wanted it or didn't want it. And so a good therapist is not going to look back into, oh, what do I think of abortion? Though that is eventually, at some point that question might come up, but that shouldn't be the basis of whether he or she helps the client. The aim here is to help the client figure out what is good, what is that they want for themselves, what is healthy for them, and not get back into the subjective world of judgment for the therapist. Okay, then subjective experiences. A good therapist will try to understand the client's point of view from the client's world, not from their world. So, a good example that I read was your mother is important to you because she is a significant figure in your life. Now, to any other person, she might look like, a lady with certain characteristics who behaves in a certain manner. But in your world, she has a very, very special place. So similarly, how you experience your world, it's called the unique phenomena. How you experience your world is exactly um, it will be very good for a therapist to know. Okay. Then therapeutic alliance. So therapeutic alliance is basically good rapport and trust between the client and the therapist. Good therapy means you have good therapeutic alliance. If you're going into therapy and you feel like you cannot trust your therapist, you feel like there is like the certain sensation and I'm getting over here and I don't feel like I can trust her or him, or I don't feel I can talk about areas about myself that I'm already feeling ashamed of, or you feel written down by the therapist, then it's not good therapy. A good therapy will be you will clearly know that you're able to trust the person, you're able to bring up material, you're able to bring up events that are painful to discuss outside. And yeah, the last one I get a lot, okay? Some of the clients come to me saying, give me the solution. I have this problem going on um, with my friends. What should I do? And and I think it's they feel very surprised to hear that I'm not going to be the one giving them the solution. They need to do the work. Hard work. Therapy is actually hard work. The role of the therapist is to uh, provide the space, but the actual work is done by the client. Okay, I realize that I'm already at 5:20 and we've kind of kept 40 to 45 minutes for the presentation. So I'm just going to speed up just a little. Okay, so these are some of the statements and um, I came across this actually on a Instagram page of a very close friend who's also a therapist, and I found that some of these statements are very, very, they resonate a lot. So it's like if someone's contemplating therapy, or you've lost interest in things or people that you used to love interacting with previously, going through a loss, traumatic experiences, excessive use of any of the substances, alcohol, smoking, sex, porn, and it is affecting, getting in the way of your daily functioning. A certain narrative, this I find it very common. You're sort of saying it to everybody around you, an experience that you've had, you're narrating it to people around you, but it's not really helpful. Okay. Okay, so now I'll hand it over to Dhruvi, and I'm wondering how do I do that? One second. Yeah, I got it. So thanks for hearing me, and I'll come back later. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Supriya. I guess that was a very personalized experience of how to look at therapy and counseling. So I'm going to just address a couple of things that all of us are going through in this COVID pandemic, and as we come to discussing, what are the struggles of singles, couples, and parents, we would also cover some of the tips of these pandemic issues that we're handling. So the first thing that is lack of safety and security. Now, a lot of people are losing their jobs, or the promotions have been stopped, or there's uncertainty as to what will happen about the finances, even in businesses, because the production has stopped. So, safety and security is at threat, and a lot of us have not been able to feel that. So, no, so that could be causing a lot of anxiety. So the second thing that I was talking about is loss of freedom, that we're not able to make choices in this time where we are restricted with our spaces or stepping out or even meeting anybody. Then comes reduction in joy and play. One of the most important elements that we get engaged into, even when we meet our peers or colleagues or outside, there is some sense of fun, enjoyment that tends to play out. And when you miss that element, irrespective of age, fun and joy is something we all need. So that is also a loss. Lack of physical connection and support. So physical connection and support, not meeting people. Um, not having to see as many faces as we are so used to for so many years. Physical social support and having somebody next to you while you're struggling and having so many anxieties is very different from having somebody on call or in person. So that is also the another thing that we are facing. Digital detox. Now I was talking to one of my friends and how he was telling me that he had planned that he would be on a digital detox and reduce his time on technology and phone, and then this pandemic came up. So how it's gone up as compared to how what he had planned. So that's also something we are struggling, each one of us, that as much as we want to spend less time on technology, but it's just increasing because that's the only mode of connection and work as well now. um, the last point is one of the most important points to know, that all of us have lost some or the other thing, so experiencing grief and being okay with it, that there is some things that we are losing, there is lack of freedom. um, you know there is denial to a lot of things, there's uncertainty which might cause a lot of loss and sadness to us, and it's okay to experience it, not to run away from it and not to say why am I feeling this it's right now and I don't want to feel it. So as much as it is difficult, it's also important to acknowledge and be aware of the grief that is happening within us. Mm, yeah, that is it. And to take care of all of these, what's important is that we look at self care. Okay, so the next slide is about self care. If you or I don't take care of ourselves, then it's very difficult to be there for anybody else or at work or even people at home. So that could be one of the challenging things if you're not taking care of yourself. So every time the first thing that comes is self care. So what are those things that you are doing to take care of yourself? To begin with, the first step is lower the bar, right? When I say lower the bar, I mean there's certain amount of pressure and expectation that we put on ourselves, that I have to perform in a certain way. I need to do this well. Oh, I'm a mother and I need to take care of these responsibilities. I am a wife, or I am a colleague, and there's a whole big department of employees under me, and there's so much I have to do. But sometimes it's okay to not come up to the expectations and our ideal selves and just feel at rest and say that okay, today I'm just going to take care of myself and have some free time for myself. So that would be first. Second could be meditation. If you don't have a lot of time, then just still spending 5 to 10 minutes of your day with yourself, and um, trying to see if you can just do either deep breathing or listen to some calm music, and get in touch with yourself, becoming aware of your own body, your thoughts, your feelings. Next comes tunes, whatever music that gives you a sense of soothing or helps you to calm yourself, or feel connected towards something that you relate to. Journaling. Writing is another very, very powerful tool that helps to track what's happening to us. And it also gives a sense of clarity, because sometimes we are not able to talk to people about everything. So just journaling down could be a sense of release and catharsis, which helps people to, get back into touch with themselves and see what to do next. Going for walks, nature is again a great therapeutic source. So walking around and birds of chirping birds this time is has increased because of reduction in pollution. So how can you go out in nature if it's feasible from your place? Then just spending some time in the balcony or walking on your terrace or in your own lane, doing that, using outer space. Not just restricting yourself in the room, but going out and exploring and seeing, getting that fresh air breather. So change of space also gives a sense of relief a lot of times. And gratitude practice, we usually forget how much important it is to acknowledge the things that we have today. A lot of people are struggling on different areas, but gratitude is something that we need to practice. And at least once, either when you wake up or before you go to bed, check yourself or ask yourself this question, that what are you grateful for today? So that is the next thing. I'm not sure if you're able to see the slides, because on my screen, um, okay, it's come now. 1 second. and I'm not able to change it. Supriya, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
I
so that,
can.
and can you see what slide is there on the?
We're actually quite advanced. It's almost on the end. Now it's tips for parents. Go back. Going back to quickly. Once more. Go back one slide. One more. One more. Yeah. Now you're in singles challenges.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So moving on to the specifics of what are the struggles that singles who are working from home or bachelors who are working from home are having, and what are the quick tips that we can offer. So beginning with that, okay, so the first one is household chores. Now, of course, from just working and sticking to what's happening in office to taking care of cleaning, cooking, washing your clothes, vessels, all of it could be very, very overwhelming. So, household chores is one of the things that they are struggling with. Socializing. Now, what happens that a lot of people are also not working from home and they've lost their jobs or they're much freer when they were freelancing. So, they have a lot more time to connect, and at the same time what happens is people who are actually still working 9 to 5 or 9 to 9, they don't get that time socializing. So as much as the other people are free, and if you are working from home and you don't get enough time to socialize, then there's this sense that everybody else is connecting and you are not able to connect. So there comes that, how to handle that. That's another struggle. um, Third could be away from friends and family. There are people who are actually working from home and they are with their friends or family, or actually staying alone. So that could be a struggle point. Lack of routine, because when I say lack of routine here, since you're all working from home, some of you are working from home, what happens is that the companies are expecting that anyway, if you're from working from home, then the work hours are going up, because it's not just office hours. In between we take breaks for eating, cooking, so the extension of work hours has increased. Difficulty in saying no, difficulty in saying no to friends or family members because they're around you, or even if they're not, then connecting. Difficulty in saying no to your colleagues and bosses if they are assigning certain amount of work and they need to know that, here's also something that you want to keep a stop to or a boundary to. Next could be goals and productivity. So, goals and productivity in comparison to others. Now, people who are comparatively free are actually exploring and developing themselves. They are signing up for courses, trying out new things, putting out content on social media. And whereas if you are someone who's working at from the in the same space and at the in the same company, then you might be feeling that you're not doing as much as compared to them. So that could be other struggle. Staying organized, of course. Handling so many things all together could get messy, and you might be feeling that things are not organized as much as they were, and especially when you are at home and in the same environment throughout, then you might want to have some sense of discipline and organization.
Sorry.
The next thing that is the last two things that are is addiction and loneliness. Now, because you might be staying alone, or there the issues with the parents, or how things are in the family as you're working from home, could lead to feeling lonely, and high intake, or need of either alcohol or nicotine, or all of us. So these are some of the challenges that bachelors or singles could be facing during this time. Okay, now going to what can we do about it? I'm also just checking time. Okay, I will also rush a little. Sense of freedom. Yeah, this is it's you can just flow with it. The topic is
Yeah.
such, but then to keep a check on that. Okay, so sense of freedom. You need to know that if you're staying alone, a lot of people are also facing that they're not getting choices. So you have a sense of freedom with respect to picking your own schedule, waking up on your own time, eating on your own time. So that is something that you one can be aware of, that you have a sense of freedom. So acknowledging that could itself be powerful. Second, self control. Of course, it's easy to blame the situation and how things are, but also take accountability and responsibility that we are responsible for how much time we want to spend on the technology and distraction. So taking charge of that, setting boundaries and assertiveness is something that I will club and talk. um, Setting boundaries and assertiveness, when I say that it's okay to say no, it's okay to tell people that right now this is your priority, and you are working and you have work and you won't be able to connect as much as they are. They might feel bad, but that is where you are. It's okay to say no to your colleagues or bosses, if there's a certain point of time that you don't want to work after 5 6 hours. So sticking to that boundary and prioritizing self-care above that, and also communicating it in a way that it's not hurtful to them and it also sticks to the point that you want to say. Having a routine and a structure is very very important. So initially 1 2 weeks everybody struggled with how do we do, what do we do, but putting a structure in space of waking time, sleep time, lunch time, once an individual does that, it gives a lot of control. And we become habituated to that, because like we were in office, when you were working 9 to 5, there was a fixed time you were waking up, having breakfast and going out. So setting that structure also here. um, Very very important to know that it's okay to be where you are. You as an individual cannot do everything. You or I cannot be perfect at everything. So giving ourselves that luxury to say that it's okay that I'm not able to do this, and it's okay that I left it today and I can maybe complete it tomorrow. So being okay with your own space, your own time, and your own feelings of where you are. And the last thing is that work from home can become quite normal now, so accepting that this could be a major chunk of our routines in the upcoming future. So accepting the new normal is also something that we need to get used to. um, Moving on to the next slide. Coming to couples now, this is also a time where couples are struggling with various things at the same time. It's also a bonding time. So newly married couples, or couples who've been in marriage, or even who are in a live-in relationship, they've been staying together or not staying together and getting quality time now. So what are the challenges they are facing, and how can they make the best use of it for each other? Okay. So first is dividing work and household chores. As much as, so there could be two possibilities: either both of you are working or one partner's working. So even in that, having a conversation about the challenges that dividing work and household chores could be a challenge, that who's doing what. Space constraint, when I say space constraint, it's about the physical space, that there could be 1 or 2 BHK and more people in the house. So how is that managed when both of you are working from home or one is working? Lack of quality time, emotional, verbal, sexual, or physical abuse. Now, there's no tip to this, but just for you to know and be conscious that uh, both the people are equally important and are doing their best in the given situation. So, to respect each other and, not hurt each other consciously, unconsciously, and specifically being aware if you're not crossing boundaries in terms of abuse. Competing with each other, this is really not about who's doing more, who's doing less, who's doing better, who's doing worse, but it's about supporting each other. So it's not a competition if two of you are home. Work from home and work at home, this could be a challenge because you are taking care of your work and at home things also. So coming to the tips, decide on the same lunch hour and break times, so you get to discuss and at least spend that half an hour together during your work schedule. Schedule time to talk about non-working things, maybe in the night or early in the morning, where you can just spend time talking about each other. Respect your partner's schedules. It could be up and down. It's not that one's is important and others is not important. So actually respecting what their schedules and needs are, and finding a midway to that. Coordination of meeting time and rescheduling when physical space is better. So a lot of times, like for example, meetings are at different times or same time, then checking that what is a priority, and if the other partner can adjust to your meeting time, and if you could adjust to their meeting time. So eventually it becomes about supporting each other and how can both of you make this work for each other. you know um Finding alone time, it can get overwhelming since both of you might be managing a lot of things. So how can you get some time by yourself and help? Divide roles and responsibilities: who's doing the dishes, who can fold the clothes today, who can clean the kitchen. So kind of taking up roles by them ourselves and also communicating about it. It's not about amount of work done by one. So it, like I said, that eventually in the end it's about how supportive you are to your partner and how supportive your partner is to you, and how can you make this time more quality and productive to understand each other's behaviors, thoughts and feelings, which can actually deepen the relationship. um, Words of affirmation and appreciation, one of the most important things. Both of you are struggling and juggling between a lot of things, and it's very nice to just take a moment and say thank you to each other, for being able to make it work out and supporting even if there are conflicts. So just taking some time out to appreciate and affirm each other that it's okay where we are. um, Balancing work from home and work at home. So how much ever work you have at office and whatever time and work you have to do at home. So kind of keeping a balance of that with respect to responsibilities and time as well. Um, I think that is it from my side.
I'm guessing I'm on air. So I don't see too many questions. I've seen a total of three, and I'll attempt to answer one of them. Um, yeah, so do please type your questions over there because we've actually kept about 15-20 minutes only for Q&A, and we're hoping that that you do have a lot of questions. So either you're really loving the presentation, and everything is crystal clear, or maybe, typing in questions is it's a very new way of interaction. So yeah, it's sort of a little hard for me to not even see faces of people. At least on Zoom calls, I'm very used to looking at, the faces of people who are okay to show their video. So it's sort of hard that I'm not able to do that at the moment. But yeah, but I'm guessing whoever is listening and watching this, you guys are actually enjoying, what we have to offer. Okay. Okay. So I'll just answer one question before moving on to the next slide. Um, Someone's asked a few websites. Okay, I'll just project this question. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, so a few websites offer therapy such as Your Dose, E, Eat Psych Clinic, etc. Is it advisable to engage? Okay, so what I'll advise is um, it is okay to have online therapy. I do have some school kids where I work who prefer, an online mode of communication because sometimes face to face can get very overwhelming for some people. To sort of have that, website or the screen as a form of interaction feels safer for some people. But generally, online does take a lot longer in terms of interaction because each party has to type their stuff out. Make sure that if you're going for online therapy, it is from a reputed place, that there is a way of ensuring that your conversations cannot be hacked by third party, that the company or the individual adheres to confidentiality. But generally online, like for example, if a face-to-face therapy takes about 40 minutes, and online will typically take an hour, right? An hour, 5 minutes, etc. Okay, so before we move on to any other question, I'll just talk a bit about children's and adolescents' anxiety. So for those of you who have young children at home or who have adolescents, this particular situation, the COVID it's very unique in the sense that none of us have ever had an experience on it. So there is no manual to go back to or no grandparents to ask questions from. So children are very sensitive in picking up what's happening in the house and what's happening in the environment around them. Okay, young children, so generally till the age of 9, 10 years, yeah, about 10, 12 years before pre-puberty kids, they would be very attuned to the changes in their environment. So even when you realize as a couple, if you're fighting and you have a very young child, they'll burst into tears or, they'll try to maybe behave aggressively to get the attention on themselves. So they are very attuned to the changes in their environment. And if they notice that there is stress in the house, they will pick it up. They'll be the first ones to pick it up, either bodily or They'll be wondering if they are the cause of, the stress that's happening in the house. So the way anxieties show up, okay, that we'll see later. The causes for these anxieties are they don't have any control over their routines anymore. They had a specific routine, and kids are very routine oriented. Once you get them into a routine, they love that. It's a very predictable part of their life. So now suddenly there is no routine. They are not able to meet their friends. They can't go down to the park and play with their friends. They can't go out and meet their friends. They can't go to the school. I have two kids of my own, and the more I, spend time with them, the more I realize that school is not just a place of learning and education. It's also a place to socialize. It's also a place to spend time with their peer group. It's a very important part of their developmental milestones. How to behave in a room with another child, how to behave in a room with 10 children, how to behave in a room with 60 children and a teacher. All these social skills, though they are not highlighted when we admit the child to the school, but they are probably the more important components that we are picking up, apart from education that comes from books and peer learning. They are not able to go out, they can't eat their favorite food, they can't meet their loved ones, like their best friends or grandpa, grandma, uncle, aunt, etc. How do anxieties show up in very young children? So they suddenly burst into tears, temper tantrums, unnecessary clinging. Suddenly you find that your child is following you everywhere. You're on a webinar, a training, an office call, a training, and the child wants to be in the same room as you. So think of the really little toddlers when they were toddlers, and they needed to see you all the time. They tend to regress back into that age, even though they would have crossed those developmental milestones. Don't want to eat. Sometimes they can get withdrawn and silent, acting out, which is like being very stubborn about listening to you. Sometimes it can also get into bedwetting. Okay, so like a physical distress that shows up in the body. Teenagers. Now, the way the pandemic is affecting teenagers is different from the way it affects adults. As adults, we know that even though we actually don't know, there's so much of uncertainty, especially in this pandemic. I think there is a higher degree of hope that things will come to some sort of normalcy, over time. There will be a way of dealing with the situation. Now, the teenage band especially is a time of a person's life where they are learning social skills, learning how to connect with their peers, learning how to sort of get that independence away from the house. So it's building identity. They are kind of trying to find their identity. Where do they fit in this world, in this confusing world of other children, in the confusing world of adults? How do they, how what are they, who are they, who am I? So these are the questions, in a teenager's mind. So when they are anxious, when teenagers are anxious, the way it shows up in the body, somewhat similar to kids, but it will also have things like unexplained outbursts, a lot of arguments. You may find that your teenagers are really arguing with you. Some of them can have physical symptoms in the form of headaches, stomach aches. They can have trouble sleeping. So sleep is an important component, and it's one of those questions that we ask. Sleeping and eating is one of the important questions that I ask on my intake form with my clients. So whenever they come to me, one of the questions I ask is, have you been eating well? Has your eating increased? Has it decreased? Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you sleeping less? Are you sleeping too long? So if you find that your teenager son or daughter is sleeping for more than 9 hours, it is a way of coping with the stress. Yeah, one of the ways to cope with stress is to literally sleep it out or not be able to sleep at all. They are awake whole night. They're sleeping in the dawn time and then going on sleeping till about 12, 12 or 1 in the afternoon. Not a very great practice. It's one of the signs to watch out for. Forgetful and distracted. They might forget what is the instruction you've given them. They might forget a conversation that you've had because anxiety takes up memory. Okay, and when anxiety takes up that space in their head, memory formation does not turn into long term. So short term, they are able to experience the present, but it doesn't convert into long term memory. So that's a sign that there's a lot of anxiety happening. Excessive fatigue, trouble sleeping. We've already discussed that. Okay. Okay. So the tips for parents. How do we handle, these anxieties that are coming up for the children? One important thing to understand, apart from, I think these are a lot of tips that are already out there on the net. I think it may sound a little repetitive if I say identify feelings, connect with loved ones, hug them, create routines, answer with patience. I think what I want to emphasize on is to understand that a lot of important events in your lives as children and teenagers, right? It could be the last day of college, the exams, the euphoria when the exams have ended, the passing out of grade. The school that I study has actually skipped the examination for class 12. And that's a really important milestone that the students have been working for throughout the year. So these milestones, it's almost like the teenagers today feel that it's robbed. I love going to school. A lot of teenagers I know have been preparing to go into universities abroad, which typically happens now. And now they're like, what's the point of going abroad if I'm not going to enjoy the campus? Because a lot of universities in the US are actually going to be starting only next year. So the first sem literally becomes online. So a lot of them are like, if I had to study online, I could have as well, registered in some other course. Why apply for something that's so far off and so expensive? So there's no one to blame, right? It's a virus which is not even really seen. So the teenagers cannot really blame anyone. At the same time, it's an extremely helpless situation for them. They do understand what's happening better than the very young kids, but not as cognitively and as logically as the adults. They're still experiencing the event in a very emotional manner. So what helps is with the older children, it helps to sit with them, understand what are they going through, have a conversation with them more as a one-to-one, yeah, like an adult to adult, rather than treating them as children. Um, you also need to understand that they have lost their freedom to connect with their peers, and that is one very important freedom that they would have loved to explore right now. Okay, yeah, the rest I think is pretty explanatory. Avoid physical punishment. I wanted to create a separate slide on this to emphasize that it does not help. It only interferes with the trust building exercise, trust formation that occurs, and teaches them to handle stress physically. Okay, I'm going to run through. Yeah, so this is a slide I thought every child would love to hear this from you from time to time. And sometimes I think we got to tell this to ourselves too. Maybe then it'll be also easier to tell them to the children. So I think I'm sort of at the end of the presentation. Yeah. So now I think we'll quickly go on to the questions section. Dhruvi, do you want to answer any questions from there?
I have written the answers to a couple of them. So I think right now there are just two questions. I thought the time would be less, so I've answered them like in the written form. So probably they can go and check it there. Um,
Okay. So there, I see one here. I'm just
yeah.
projecting it, which says sometimes situation or environment makes us lose self-confidence. Uh, okay, so I think the question here is it the situation that's making me lose a self-confidence or is it being created by me? Um, so I think it's important to understand that your response to any situation is created inside, right? No matter how good or how bad, if you have to use the word good and bad, the situation is, how you are responding to it is definitely internal. And so somebody can pull your hair and you can say, I'm going to get angry with this. Or you can say, okay, what's the reason behind you pulling my hair? Let's have a discussion. Or you can say, I'm not even going to talk to you for the next half an hour. So the internal emotion that gets generated, it is from within. No matter how much one says that it's you have made me angry or you have made me scared, it's actually from within. The generation happens from within. How you choose to express it is also in your hands. So yeah, the hard answer to that is the response, the response to the situation and the manner in which you express it is in your control. The situation may not be in your control. The act of stopping the situation may not be in your control. Yeah. Dhruvi, want me to take the other question as well?
Yeah, you can go ahead with it, Supriya.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just project that. It says, how would you deal with prank calls from children during telecounseling sessions? It can be interpreted as need for attention, okay, affiliation, etc. Um, well, prank call generally might mean that you don't know who's calling on, at the other end. So it's like the identity of the child. If you get to know that it is a certain child calling you, then I think you're very right. It is definitely a need for attention. The child might be feeling lonely. The child might be feeling very disconnected. When I was reading up about counseling, there is this thing called stroke, like a stroke. So there are these negative strokes and positive strokes. So in strokes, when you look at it from a psychological aspect, a positive stroke is telling a child, good boy, or good girl, I'm proud of you. Like those things I showed, the slide, the 7 things. A negative stroke would be like scolding or shouting at the child. Okay. Uh, Studies have found that the children would do anything to get a stroke. And even if they're not getting a positive stroke, a negative stroke is better than a no stroke. So getting some response from you is better than getting none at all, because getting none means there is no stimulus, right? Emotional, psychological stimulus, and that's very, very hard. It's very hard for a child not to get any kind of stimulus. So they need a response from you. So this could be an indication that I'm lonely, I want connection, I'm feeling very disconnected right now. The child may not be able to articulate it, in such clear words. So they would need to actually, they do it in this way. They show it through behavior. Okay. Um, any other questions? Dhruvi, would you like to say something? Would you like me to give you the control?
No, no, this is fine. I can still talk. I think probably if any of you have any questions from what we presented or or on the slides that we said, or out of like even any other question that you would like to be addressed, then please, you're most welcome.
I
Or
see one here. I see
okay.
one here, and I think it's very relevant, especially in today's scenario, which says, how do we maintain a long distance relationship, which is created because of lockdown, where our partners are separate due to travel restrictions. And this is a classic case happening right now, especially because of the lockdown. So see, a relationship in a lockdown. So lockdown is like a symptom of a crisis, right? It's a crisis that's going on, and a crisis can happen in any way. Uh, Today it's a lockdown, and it's a common crisis that's being experienced throughout the world. But in order to face a crisis in any relationship, there needs to be a lot of investment that ideally could have been happening right from the start. So are you spending enough time with each other? Are you regularly nurturing each other? Is there like a certain amount of a certain amount of attention, or a response to a bid? There's this psychologist called John Gottman. He says when your partner is uh, and it can be something very small, like a partner can say, hey, how are you, or I missed you yesterday, or thanks for washing the dishes for me. These are small bids for attention, like exactly like what the child is doing. The child is doing a prank call. A partner does it in the form of bids for each other. A partner does it in the form of like a partner could be reading a newspaper and could be saying, a husband could be telling his wife, you know what, now this is what is going on right now, and he is actually waiting for a response from the wife, even if it's a her, even if it's a, oh, I see. So these are small ways in which nurturing is taking place in the relationship. So it's almost like an emotional bank account. If there's enough investment that has happened, then it has the power to tide over the crisis. The crisis cannot be the place where the investment starts. It can be probably a place where you recognize that there isn't enough investment made. So yes, we need to start really looking after each other, maybe bring about more structure to our communication, ensure that we are also recognizing what's good in the relationship, ensuring that we are recognizing what we like about the other partner. So that can be a place to maybe start if it's not been happening. But yeah, I would say one of the ways to connect well during a lockdown is make use of voice mediums, make use of the internet. I'm at least so grateful that we have technology. So at least something like this is possible even in a lockdown. So yeah, look at the gratitude. Like Dhruvi spoke about gratitude list, right? Make a gratitude list of each other. What do you like about each other? Why are you still in the relationship? There must be things you still look forward to. So these are ways to build. Dhruvi, you want to add anything?
No, I think I've also added that it's very important to communicate, because maybe you were staying together for a very long time and now there's a gap that you're staying in different spaces. Then what happens is that sometimes there's lack of understanding in terms of like their own living situation. You know, that you're not giving enough time. It was better that if you were staying together, then things would have worked out more, or at least we would be seeing each other. So giving, like, having that understanding of what is the environment that your partner is in, you know, it's very important to know that, and see that it's not that they don't want to give you time, but maybe sometimes they can't because of the space that they are in. So also keeping that in mind and communicating that what do you expect, what do you not expect, and how much can you give in. Because if I state 10 things that I expect out of my partner, then it might not be necessary, or it might be too pressurizing for the other person to come up or fulfill all those expectations, you know. So
Hmm.
actually um, checking on those expectations, and first checking with yourself that can you fulfill all of them. If not, then what how many of them can you fulfill, and on what can you negotiate, and see the other possible ways, so that it's not an obligation or pressurizing for you, but more of, you know, you're doing it willingly, and that would make it more authentic in a relationship, rather than doing something out of fear because the partner might get angry or leave, or various other reasons. So yeah, I think, yeah. Other question was, how does one know that they need therapy? So yeah, Supriya set the slide. Uh, Checking within with respect to feeling, how do you feel often, are there intense emotions that come up for you, maybe anger, sadness, you know, insecurities, fear, how are you experiencing relationships in your life, be it with people at home or outside home. So these are some of the things that you would know what's happening to you. Are there any addictions that you're getting into, or you know, even as simple as negative thought patterns, or how critical or non-critical are you about self and others. So sometimes we just don't realize that we are so critical to ourselves in situations, and those statements really affect the way we start looking at ourselves, which also reflects on how we look at people. So checking on those things will really help to know that whether you need therapy and consultation or no. And it's just normalizing again that it's really okay to consult a therapist. Your issues don't have to be big or small, they're important to you, and that's what should matter.
Yeah. So there's another question on email consulting firm. Uh, and I think you can reach out to Skillcraft, or whoever is actually the medium through which we are doing it. And I'm sure that they will pass on your details, and we have passed on our details to them. So you can definitely reach out to Skillcraft if you want any of our services, Ruby or mine. Yeah. There's another question here: how to overcome if a partner is not talking to a partner because they're angry and not ready to listen. So, Dhruvi, would you want to answer
Uh, okay,
that?
you can add on. I will go on to it. I
Hmm.
think this is really something a lot of us do face quite often. Anger and communication. You know, because um, anger is such a passive or aggressive mode to express something that we really tend to lose out on what we really wanted to say. So there could be different ways to address it. You need to know what works for you when you're angry and what works for your partner. You know, some people need space during that time. Some people want to just talk in that moment. So really figuring out that what works for you when you're angry and what would help. You know, if giving them some space helps, then leave them for a while and then go back, but with an assurance that this fight or this argument is not impacting the relationship, you know. Because a lot of people personalize that a fight or an argument means that it's the end of the relationship or something's going to go wrong. So reassuring that, and coming back together when both of you are in a space to listen and understand what really happened rather than blaming each other. So it's not about seeing whose fault it was, but what happened in the situation. And next time if a similar situation comes, then how can you we communicate better, and what would help the two of us to know each other or understand a perspective. So Priya, you can add on, and I think this is also the last question that we would be taking since it's past time.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've beautifully covered it, Dhruvi. It's giving space, understanding what works for each one of you. If one of you tends to get angry and disconnect, and the other one gets very anxious because of the need to connect, we call it anxious and avoidant, attachment styles. So to understand that the partner who's disconnecting may be needing space to recover, they might be feeling very overwhelmed, they might need time to themselves, but also for the partner who's disconnecting to understand that the one who's reaching out to them is under extreme anxiety. Actually, both of you are under extreme anxiety. You're just showing it in very different ways. So to, not to wait till the fight happens, to sort of come to an agreement on, what do we do when we fight? To fight fair, because fights will continue to happen. It will be very unrealistic if you're not fighting at all. But to fight in a manner that's healthy, to fight in a way that says, okay, I need to disconnect from you. I need about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and then I will get back. And then, we both would have calmed down, and then we can talk about this issue again. Or to have an understanding when is it okay to get back, and then get back, not just stay disconnected, for a really long period, because that doesn't help the relationship at all. It actually silence actually harms relationships. So it's not a great way to resolve conflict. That's it. I am done. I think we're also running out of time.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, guys. I hope this was helpful, and it was a pleasure to address some of the things from our own experience and learning. And yeah, we would love to do it more often. And I think both of us together also did something for the first time, and we enjoyed doing it and coming up with this. So thank you to also Skillscraft for bringing us on board and giving this chance to kind of address what we really did today. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. You've been a great audience. Thanks for the questions. I love it when it's interactive. Otherwise, it's like, are they understanding? Are they not? So I think it was really fun for me also to co-host this with Ruby. And thank you, Skillcraft, for giving us the opportunity, to reach a wider audience. Have a good day.
Bye
Good evening,
bye.
rather. Bye.